Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme, exploring the genre of sludge metal, this time looking at a band that I do associate with the genre, and I think we even checked out the last time we did a sludge metal theme. We're looking at Neurosis. This comes off of their Souls at Zero album. We're going to be looking at the track A Chronology for Survival. This is from 1992, it looks like, track 7 on the album. Let's dive in, see what's going on with Neurosis. Has quite the build up here at the beginning of this track. This guitar work over here is I love all the vocal work here. All the vocal lines like overlap each other, and I think it's 3 different singers, right? There's at least 3 different deliveries here. They all sound This is the second time we've been to this section, but having the sound over here with more of an emptier sound over here, just the imbalance of that. So that first note from the clean electric was actually where the tension from our distorted guitars was supposed to resolve to. So we did get a continuation of that musically while shifting the timbres of the instruments. I will say they find interesting ways to pull us from our peaks and our valleys. Yeah, the reverb with just a hair bit of distortion. It's not a fully clean guitar sound. Fantastic for this mood. Same chord progression we had, just now doing full chords rather than melodies outlining the chord. Figured we were going to follow that pattern of reducing the tempo every repetition or every other repetition. We only have the one tempo drop though.
They do not lie awake in the dark, weeping over their sins. They do not make me sick, discussing their duty to God. They do not lie awake in the dark, weeping over their sins. They do not make me sick, discussing their duty to God.
Really trying to figure out what the point of that outro was. just really ruined like everything that I had. And I was like, I gotta talk about this, I gotta talk about this, it's gonna lead into this topic, we're gonna wrap it up here, it's gonna be a really nice analysis. And then they just throw this wrench in here. So we gotta talk about the ending first. The entire song is like metal. We have these nice, clean electric interludes every now and then, but that's like 30% of the song. The other 70% is this metal. That's the defining element of it. We have the heaviness, the weight, the gnarliness of the instruments. We have the delivery of the vocals, which are all fairly heavy and aggressive, even the ones that aren't using harsh vocals. And then we bring in melodic elements with the violin. And that sort of defines the back half of the track, or this gnarly guitar work with these melodies on top of it, the violin lines. It's all very harmonious. There's darkness, sure. Weight, tension, sure. But consonant harmony. Everything works together to make sense. And we get to the ending, and we have about a minute and 10 seconds once if we include the crossfade between the metal part and our outro. We have an acoustic guitar, maybe a clean electric guitar, strumming the same chords we had from our previous section. There's a tie over here. The violin is still playing something similar to what it was doing in the previous section as well. We do have these ties to the song proper, but on top of that, we have a sample, a clip of somebody talking and a trumpet. I'm not too sure because the instruments here, as well as the vocals, have a ton of media degradation on them. They sound like they're older and the quality is degraded over time, and so some of the key elements in the timbre is sort of missing. What I liken it to, at least in my memory, is listening to an old-timey Merry Melodies. What I know should be a trumpet, but just doesn't quite sound like one because what I'm watching is 100 years old. The only way to make it, clearer with high quality production on it is to re-record the parts, and well, I guess that's a topic for another day, but regardless, that's what this sounds like to me. It sounds like a trumpet from older media. The trumpet part is not doing anything with our violin and guitar. They're in totally different keys, possibly totally different ideas. They're not melodically lined up, they're not harmonically lined up. They are just two completely different songs played at the same time, and someone is trying to speak in the middle of this clash, and I can barely understand what he's saying because of all the things between our two musical ideas that just aren't working together. For a song that is as cohesive and harmonious as it is, this ending feels very out of place. It is the one moment where I feel like the song falls apart. And if it were just the sample of the vocals with the trumpet next to it, I think that would have been okay, but it would have felt disjointed. I like the idea that they're like, okay, we wrote this for the previous section, we're going to adapt it to our outro as well, so that this all feels continuous. It feels like this isn't just some random outro, it is part of the song, but the things just do not line up. It is the strangest outro I think I've heard in a while. Maybe the lyrics, maybe the sample. I figure out what the soundbite is, and I get the words that he's saying. Maybe all that'll make more sense. But first time listen, going based off of just the music, it comes out of nowhere and it clashes so hard. I really have no idea what to make of it yet. Now the rest of the song, I think, is really great. particularly I want to focus on the vocal lines. I There's only one vocal bit, right? We heard an adaptation of it later on, but it's the three vocal deliveries. They all sound fairly unique to me, but there is a similarity between them, so it could just be one person double tracking, maybe two people, but it could also be three people, which I think would be really cool. But they're all overlapping, which I think is cool. You get the first line, which is semi clean, and then you get at the end of it, you get this harsh growl put on top of like the final syllable, and then there's a gap, and then we have like a full on clean, I think, vocal that does the next line, and at the end of it, they hold out a note, and our first vocalist comes over and sings on top of it. And there's like this overlapping of all of this, and it's just such a cool baton pass. I'm gonna sing something, and you're gonna sing something, and you're gonna sing something, and it's all just gonna merge. It's not gonna be, distinct moments of cutoff. It doesn't quite feel like counterpoint because so rarely are, nope, never do we have two ideas happening at the same time. Somebody else just comes in when somebody else is finishing their idea and still holding out that final syllable. So it is more like a baton pass in that manner. It is just very cool. I love it. I'm a sucker for multiple guitar parts or multiple vocal parts already. And it is just like the most metal thing I could think of. It feels so much like a medley in a musical where they're piecing together, a bunch of different songs that we've heard and sort of reprising some of these lines, but all the different people are singing their parts simultaneously, and you're getting a little snippet of this character and a little snippet of that character. It doesn't happen in every musical because it's really tough to pull off well, especially since musicals are going to be doing a medley of the music, and at least here the music is static. But that's what it reminds me of vocally, and it hits all the right spots. I love it, but it's like a metal edge. We have the compressed cleans, we have the harsh in here. It's very cool, and the music underneath is absolutely rule of cool, gnarly, sludgy guitar production riffage. It just, yes. I don't know any other way to describe it. If you didn't like that part, I don't think there's anything I can say to make you enjoy it more. It is just so well executed. I think it speaks for itself, and I'm really glad I got to hear something like that. And I want more of that. Is that something Neurosis does often? I may not always be on board with their instrumental work, and we'll get to that in a second. But every single time this verse is, there's no chorus to this, right? We just heard a series of verses, and I think even the words sounded similar throughout all of them. So maybe it's just like one verse that gets repeated through the whole song. I don't care. It sounds great. Every time it came on, I was ready for it. You know, I talk about often, if you're going to do a chorus, by the third time in the chorus, especially in a shorter track, you need to be doing something different. Put some variation on it. Don't make me sit through that same thing again. But I guess when things hit, I can excuse the repetitiveness. I absolutely want to hear that verse one more time. I'd listen to it three more times. I'll put the track on again. It is right up my alley. It is such a good balance of layered melodic writing and vocal deliveries, and it sounds so good over the chunky, gnarly guitar work. Speaking of chunky, gnarly guitar work, I've had a theory since yesterday at least that much like black metal, sludge is a production thing. This doesn't really change my mind on that too much. If we replaced some of the guitar tones here but changed nothing about what they were playing, I think we could move to a different genre entirely. I don't know what genre that is. I've been trying to I'm real bad with early metal. I can for them well, death is early metal too, but I can pretty much find death metal, black metal, post metal, but like the rocks, especially hard rock, I think, because that covers a couple of different types of music based on era. But like heavy metal, I don't really have a good ear for. So I don't know what exactly I think this composition is. But I don't feel like it belongs specifically to sludge. I think what really makes this sludge is the tempo and the guitars, because this is the one thing. If we look at Cult of Luna, we look at yesterday's Melvins, we look at Neurosis today, they've all had drastically different musical ideas, but they all sort of hone in around one sound. Massive, crunchy, gritty, filthy, gnarly guitar tones, and this is no different. It is a unique tone against Cult of Luna, against Melvins, but it still fits that same bill. I couldn't really hear the bass in here. That might have been me, but it might just be how big these guitars are. But the guitars are massive, and they do something really interesting with this. They understand just how big their guitar tones are. The guitar itself can fill an entire channel of audio, and so they do. They split the guitars, one on each side, left and right, with almost no crossover to the center channel. There's a little bit, but they're very heavily weighted towards their own side. And they do something really cool with this, where they create an imbalance of weight. They frequently allow the right side guitar to keep up that wall of sound, to just hold out a note, hold out the next note, hold out the next note, no pauses, no space. And the left guitar will do like a single note and then a little bit of break and then another single note, and it's so small. It's still big. It's not like we're playing just clean electric. It's a big sound, but it's so small compared to the other side. And you're just kind of like, you got all this weight on one side and something close to emptiness on the other. There were a couple of times that I forced myself to swallow because I legitimately thought my ear needed to be popped. It sounds muffled and small when you don't expect it to be. But I really feel like that's part of it. They want that discrepancy. They want that difference in comparison. And they understand that they can achieve that to a much greater degree than most bands because they're going for this larger than life wall of sound, single instrument approach. Even with one guitar, the song is massive, so they can play around with size and scope that way, and it leads to some interesting atmospheres in this track. Now, the metal isn't the only thing we get in this track, and we also get some really nice, subtle, atmospheric, clean electric bits. These are gorgeous, absolutely. They play around with darkness and they play around with tension in harmony quite a bit more than the heavier sections. And this is something we've explained earlier in the week, but long story short, if you're playing with distorted instruments, dissonant sounds are amplified and they're more difficult to wield than if you have a clean or acoustic instrument. And so it is interesting to see them play around with spicier harmonies when they have the quieter instruments. It's like they know it's tougher to play them in a controlled, restrained way. And so they relegate those harmonies just to the clean areas. It's actually really smart composition and shows that they understand uh, the relationship between sound waves and distortion, amplification, whether they innately know that or they bookwormy know it, they've been taught it. Regardless of where they get the knowledge from, though, they have an understanding of it and they utilize the expanded palette that they have for creating chords specifically in places where they're not using the overdrive and the amplification and the distortion. At least to me, it sounds like they're doing it specifically because they know they can control these wider and more imbalanced chords during those moments. And so I really like that because not only do I get a little bit of contrast and relief from the heavier bits, but I also get an expanded harmonic palette. I get to listen to something a little bit different, not just calmer or less heavy, but also emotionally different. And it's really nice to get to those moments and then to see them build back up out of them, sometimes build down into them as well. I mentioned that their transitions are really cool, that they always find a way to sort of flow into and out of their peaks and valleys, and they do. They find some really inventive way. They had a choir-esque thing going on at one time. It was two or three vocals, I think, just kind of allowing the guitars to come down to one of the quieter sections, and using these vocals on top of that to sort of disguise that that's what we're doing. Really neat way to go about doing that. There is one interesting thing in here, though. We have a bit of a slow burn in the back half. It's interesting to compare this to yesterday's Melvin's track, Honey Pot, Honey Bucket, Honey Bucket, because that song I thought was going to be an instrumental. We got through half the track and hadn't heard any lyrics yet. Here, we get through half the track and we've heard all the lyrics. The back half of the song is a slow burn, taking us from one of our most quieter introspective moments all the way, building all the way up to a massive section with an expanded instrumentation. We have the violin in the back half that I don't think we had in the first half. This is going to be hit and miss, I think, for people. For me, it's sort of mid. I think they do a great job at building this energy up, and I loved seeing the progression of it, listening to the way that the guitar riff evolves and changes over time. When we shifted from the clean electric to the distorted electric, I even noted that they went from playing an outline of the chord to just playing the chords themselves. The progression was retained, though. They had ways of evolving not just the sound, but the composition as well, in order to create a cohesion between everything in this section as they built it up to where we would peak towards the end. I do feel like it went on just a hair bit too long, not because there's a limit to how long slow burns can be, but because it just didn't introduce interesting ideas to me at any sort of rate that I thought made the time not feel long. And I think that's really the best way I can look at it. There are some slow burns and I'm just fully vibing with it, and then it's over, and the song's done. I'm like, dang, 10 minutes passed. Where'd that go? And then there's slow burns like this, and we get a few ideas into it, and I look at the time like, oh, we still have 3 minutes left in the song. It's that moment of being aware of the time. Some songs suck me in, and some songs kind of keep me at arm's length, and I'm aware of the passage of time. I'm aware of the slow burn itself rather than being on the journey. I think it's the difference between being in the song and being outside of the song. And unfortunately, I think that's just a subjective thing that I don't have any an analytical thing to bring into. I don't know why this one doesn't suck me into it like some other slow burns do. I know I'm pretty resistant to slow burns overall, especially in this setting. Camera on me, lights on me. I'm expected to be analytical in this space, and I think it's more difficult for me to get out of that. But even in my casual listening, I don't have reasons or explanations on why one composition works and one doesn't. I don't think there's anything I can point to how they're playing or what they're playing. And the same is here. I think it's a fine slow burn. It just didn't grab me. And aside from maybe putting a melody in it, which it was absolutely lacking, especially, well, we had the violin melody, which I thought was really nice during the clean electric section. But once we went distorted, the violin shifted to ostinatos, or in metal terms, riffs. And from then on out, we had We had loops everywhere. We didn't really have an overarching melody on top of it. And that might have been when I began to recognize the length of it. I don't know. I'd have to go back and give it a second listen. But I'm trying to tie all this into the chronology for survival. So, like, time's even in here, and survival. And so I think that's also something that hits me about the the outro of the song, is I was already sort of done with the track with the slow burn. And then the song ends with something that confuses me even more. And as much as I really love the beginning of this track, it does end on a bit of a sour note for me. Again, at least on a first time listen. As with a lot of stuff, a second time might yield different results, whether that's something I check out immediately now. I turn the camera off, I'm done recording, I listen to it again, I'm like, oh, that's good. Or something I check out 5 years from now. Maybe it clicks with me then. We all change, our musical tastes change. It's always important to not necessarily always revisit stuff, because dang, I mean, if we revisited everything that we've ever listened to or watched or played or read, we'd have no time for anything else. But to remember that nothing is set in stone. Just because you don't like something today doesn't mean you won't like it tomorrow, 5, 10 years down the road. Let's hit some lyrics and see what's going on there. And see, this is where expanded context helps a lot. So when I said the phrase, a chronology for survival, I was thinking of linear chronology, such as possibly the human race, and looking at some of the earliest parts of our history and the chronology of how we have survived over all of this time and continue to thrive and expand and grow in our understanding and even mastery over this planet. This song is not interested in that at all. It sees a linearity, sure, but a linearity of cycle. The chronology for survival is a circle. It is a loop. In fact, both of our verses are the same but inverted. There's two ideas. The cycles, they are clawing, thrive, wander, then starve. The cycles, they are thawing, dive, wallow, then freeze. That's it. That's the entire verse. The first time through, though, we do clawing, thawing, clawing. The second time through, we start with thawing and then go to clawing and then end on thawing. We have the inverse, but it's still only the two ideas. Our chorus says, ripping up through the cracks the thriving of the doomed before the cleanse to dust. Chorus 2 says, a chronology for survival. The cycles are what they are. It is about the cyclicality of it, and the post-chorus is what really drives this home. It says, rise, run, feed, ripen, wound, wither, fall, rise again. That is the entire post-chorus, and we do that twice. We repeat it 4 times, and we do that 4-time repetition twice. It is about survival seen in the larger scope of things, not about the minutia, right? Survival today looks different than survival 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago. But the idea, the underlying part is the same. To feed, to grow, to wither, to fall, rise up again. It's the circle of life, basically. And this isn't the survival of a single person, it's the survival overall. The rising up, the withering, falling, and rising up again could be seen as a singular cycle. To take your mistakes in stride, learn from them, and rise up again. But the idea of ripening, withering, and falling to me sounds like birth and death. It's the survival of species, which is where the infinite pattern comes from. And so the entire song is based on short loops, short cycles. Even the verse itself finds itself stuck in cycles. This puts a lot of the musical choices into perspective. And it makes me actually question the one part that I really loved in this track, which are the third, it was the last time we had the quiet section, the clean electric guitars, and the violin comes in. We have this beautiful, more linear oriented writing on it. It is one of the few times in the song we escape a cycle, but we can't do it forever. I'm not sure what it represents in the concept of the lyrics, but by the end of this section, when we bring in the electric guitars, I had mentioned that one of my favorite things there was that we had this melody and it gets turned into an ostinato, a riff. But in the context of the theme, this is an outlier being bent to conform to the cycles of life. It becomes a part of the story, of the chronology of survival. Nothing can escape the circle of life. It's an interesting song from that angle. I think it does a great job at utilizing the main hook of a lot of metal, the riff, the cyclicality of that, the repetition of it, and saying, "Hey, we have this cohesion here. We're going to sing about cycles. This song, we need to make it cyclical." And it is. It comes together very well on that front. It also leads me to wonder what in the world that outro is then. I unfortunately could not find what was being said in the sample. All the lyric sets I found, it just says sample. I'm like, yeah, I know, man. That's the part I figured out. I need help with what's in the sample. But musically, even not knowing what the sample is, it's still such a bizarre way to end it, full of dissonance and clashing ideas and callbacks to where we were, but just in a very different place for a song about cycles. My best guess is that we've reached the end of our cycle. There may have been reproduction in there, and the chronology for survival will continue on with our kin, but we've reached the end of our cycle. And musically, it's supposed to lead into our death, but I kind of don't get that idea from the music. As I mentioned, you can certainly take a personal perspective here, but to me, the song is about the larger scope of survival, survival of species. And so it's really, it would be a weird turn, at least in my mind, how I understand the track to position a more personal element there at the end of it. But as usual, those are just my thoughts on Neurosis' a chronology for survival. Let me know yours. Do you have a different take on this, different perspective or opinion? Do you have your own read on the lyrics or the way that the music interacts with the themes of the song? Let me know. That's what the comments section is for. Above the comments in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, a schedule for the channel, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for this one. We do have a special video next. Every once in a while, I like to pick something I personally want to check out, and we listened to some Korean hip hop a couple weeks back, and a lot of people told me I should check out another member from BTS doing their side project. And it's an NPR Tiny Desk concert, so all this sounds real good to my ears. We're going to check out V from BTS doing some of his music. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical. Actually, I think I missed one part. If you're not interested in that, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC. We're going to continue on with more sludge metal if that's your jam, and Korean pop isn't. Alright, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.